In the Trenches with Ryan Roxie.
I mean, I think that's where the birth of the Professor of Rock interview and that style and sort of that adulation or sort of, just the people that you interview giving you so much credit, because it's not just the Beach Boys that put some accolades on you. It is so many of the people that you interview. In fact, if you go on to Adam's Patreon, he's got on your hype reel, it's just so insane the amount of names and that you have on that list of the names that you have been interviewing. Like I went through Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys, legendary names, Carlos Santana, Ann Wilson, like you said, you grew up listening to, Neil Sean, Huey Lewis, which we just had a picture of, Sammy Hagar, the nicest guy in the world. I would lump Huey Lewis as one of those nice guys too. Very genuine. I have had
yes, love Huey. And after I went to a show and I took my wife with me, and he met my wife after the show. It was just so sweet, wonderful. He's a great guy, no question. And there's some great stories. There's some great stories about, like, I'll tell you, one of the most interesting things. Remember "We Are the World"?
Yes, I do.
We all do. Single. Oh yeah, every '80s kid remembers that. But there are some great stories.
Behind the scenes stories. What's going on?
I mean, if you imagine, you get all those people in one room for 10 hours. Can you just imagine?
Weren't you supposed to leave your personality at the door? Wasn't that sort of or leave your ego? Yeah, leave your ego at the door, but not everybody did that apparently.
Well, it's just, there's so many great stories. Like Prince was supposed to be there. Prince and Michael Jackson had their rivalry, going on, and you had Springsteen who pulled up in a beater car, is what Kenny Loggins told me. And I'm fascinated by that, because I remember as a kid when they played that. Do you remember when they played, like, every radio station played that song at the same time? They had this big thing when the single came out. Dude,
yes. I'm right in that genre as well.
I remember, and I just was so fascinated. And so I was like a kid in the candy store when I could ask about "We Are the World" to, like, Huey. There's been like 7 or 8 people I've interviewed that were there that told me these little stories that are just so fascinating, because Ray Charles and Bob Dylan and Bruce Springsteen and Billy Joel and I mean Tina Turner and.
Did anybody stab anybody at one point? Was anybody shanked? That's all I know.
I'm sure that Prince or Michael Jackson wanted to do that to one another, but
well, the one I just recently watched and you just recently posted was the story behind "Do They Know It's Christmas?" And that was between Bob Geldof and Midge Ure, and those stories were amazing in itself. How Boy George wasn't going to be there. He was supposed to be there, but then when they called him up to say, "Where are you?" he said something like, "I'm in New York," or something.
Yeah. So he took a red eye and got there, and
he didn't just take a red eye. He took the friggin', what was that? The Millennium Falcon. What was that called? The Concorde.
Yeah, it's called the
Concorde. Yeah, they don't even have. Yeah. So wait, so you're saying that Bob Geldof called Boy George in New York and told him to get over to the studio, like immediately?
Midge Ure called him. Yeah, Midge Ure called him and said, "Hey, where are you at?" And he said, "I'm in New York." And he said, "Well," and I guess he figured it out and said, "Well, you got the Concorde is leaving at 2 hours or whatever. You got to get on that." And then boom. And this was back in 1984. So this was before we had the internet. And I mean, how did you track him down? Call him up on the phone. This is back in the day when we didn't have cell phones, if you can imagine that.
It's right? True. I mean, the thing is, you have all these stories and then a lot of them revolve around songs. And before we started the podcast today, I told you how my wife and I were just in bed one day going down that YouTube rabbit hole, and we happened across the Goo Goo Dolls story of Iris, and it was you interviewing the lead singer of the Goo Goo Dolls and talking about Iris, and it was something I'd never heard that story. How, like, the record company wanted to know the name of the song, and he was just like looking at a newspaper, or what the hell was he doing? He was and
Iris Dement was a singer, and he's like, Iris, yeah.
So he just said that on the phone to the record company. He goes, "That's the name of the song that we're working on," and they just accepted it, and that was it. I mean, folks, you got to check out the inside story, and I'm sure you get a lot of those through all these interviews that you're able to do. A lot of those little nuggets of like sort of back, you know, deep state secrets, you know, of the story of the song. I love it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I'm seeing some of these things coming up below of people making comments, and appreciate everybody who's said some things. That it's so nice when people appreciate, Ryan, for what you do, when people appreciate your work and what you're doing. And the biggest thing here is to keep the music alive. I just think that we live in this world right now where there's a lot of crisis. I mean, with the pandemic and with all the things that we've faced over the last year, the one thing that brings all of us together that we don't have to beat the crap out of each other about is music. I mean, when you're in I think everybody can agree that "Sweet Child of Mine" is a great song. And if you're seeing Guns N' Roses in concert and that song comes on, everybody in that room is singing every word to that song, and we're all in unison. That's true unity right there. To me, that's what we should be preaching, is the gospel of rock and roll. That's just my opinion.
That's great. That's exactly what we need. We talked about a little bit about music and you playing guitar, or is it guitar that you play? I'm assuming it was guitar that you play.
I play a little bit, but not, I mean, just a little bit, but I was a lead singer in a band, and we recorded a couple of albums. And then I did a swing album, actually, like a Sinatra. This is a little secret that I let a little bit out, because I just did a little piece on Van Halen Jump, and we did a version of Jump, a swing version, like if Sinatra were to take on Jump. And I was actually really fortunate to have a guy that had played with a lot of different people in the Letterman and stuff like that. He's an older guy. He actually passed away a few years ago, but he could write charts. He could write like horn charts. And so I said, hey, what if we took like 80s and 90s songs and redid them in a Sinatra kind of big band version? And he wrote it out. We did it for Africa. We did it for Jump. We did it for The Way You Make Me Feel, Michael Jackson, stuff like that. And I was like a kid in a candy store. It was so much fun. And so that's what I do. I sing. I write lyrics when I was in my band, come up kind of with melodies more in my head and kind of hum them. I'm not really blessed with the instrument type thing.
I've heard a band do Wonderwall swing version before, and they have Oasis Wonderwall, and I thought that was a really good version. Perhaps Tom Jones' version of Prince's Kiss is another great one as well.
Oh, yeah.
But do we have to go on to the dark web to find this versions of that you're doing, or is this something that maybe might be coming out soon or released?
I don't know.
Somewhere out there.
I have people. Sometimes I've got a young millennial that works for me, young kid, and actually quite a few. And it's kind of fun because when we go to these interviews, they discover this new music, and they'll say, "Oh man, I've become a huge fan of the Zombies or whatever since this interview." So it's kind of fun. But they've said, "Hey, you should put a little bit more of yourself out there. What you used to do," and people like that kind of thing. And honestly, I'm not really comfortable with that. I'm just the guy that interviews people and people. So I put this out on the Jump piece, and so a lot of people say, hey, I really like that. I'd like to check that out. I think it's actually up on Reverb Nation.
Well, there you go.
That stuff, yeah. They can look it up. The Turks was the name of the band.
What's called The Turks?
The Turks, yeah. TERKS. The Turks, yeah. It was back in the day.
Go. Well, I appreciate you coming on the podcast because, like I said, I get to ask questions to the man that's always asking questions. But your millennial sort of coworkers or people that you work with are completely right. People do appreciate all the stuff that you do. And getting back to music, being that we're right around that point where we're going to go into our commercial, it's about playing guitar. It's about playing music, getting into music and starting your guitar journey. So if you're interested in starting the guitar journey after the show, I will give you the link and you can start off and play guitar with the System 12 that we have with the whole entire team, the RGA that we call it. Of course, that's Dave Rattenbury. And of course, we have Robby Miller, Federic, Scotty Hagen, and our own producer, Vic Chalfant. This is myself doing the System 12 ad. Vic, will you run it right now, please? Hello, folks. Ryan Roxie here, and thanks for watching and supporting all things we are doing over here at the RGA, otherwise known as the Roxie Guitar Army headquarters. We'd like to invite you to start your own guitar journey with the most comprehensive and easy-to-learn course that's out there today, the System 12 Guitar Method. I've taken my 40-plus years of experience of playing guitar and combined it with some of the best tech and guitar life hacks to come up with a system that'll get you playing not just the guitar, but entire songs in a very short time. Check out the links provided and make sure to enjoy the lessons. And of course, enjoy the ride. Now, back to the show.